Hey, future global citizens. You ever get that overwhelmed feeling when it comes to proving your English skills?
Oh, yeah. I know what you mean.
Like all those acronyms, IELTS, TOEFL, Cambridge exams.
It's like they all just blur together, right?
Yeah, enough to make your head spin.
Sure.
But no worries, that's where we're diving deep today.
We're gonna decode these English exams.
So you can confidently pick the one that's your perfect match, right?
Exactly.
Think of us as your trusty navigators.
Helping you chart a course to English language success.
Oh, okay. First things first, let's demystify these alphabet soup exams,
Okay.
starting with IELTS.
All right. So IELTS stands for International English Language Testing System.
Okay.
It's kind of like the Swiss Army knife of English exams.
Okay.
Widely accepted for work study and even immigration in
Wow.
a ton of countries.
So if you're thinking about studying in the UK, Australia, or even Canada, IELTS is often like that ticket you need to kind of get in the door.
You got it. And here's where it gets even more interesting.
Okay.
The IELTS comes in two flavors,
Ooh, flavors.
academic and general training.
Okay, so tell me more.
All right, so if you're aiming for university studies or other higher education adventures,
Okay.
academic IELTS is the one for you.
Gotcha.
It focuses on the kind of English skills you'll need in those academic settings.
Okay, so what about general training?
Think of general training as your passport to the professional world,
Okay.
or for folks planning to immigrate to an English-speaking country.
Right.
It's all about those everyday English skills you need to thrive in a workplace
Yeah.
or a community setting.
So it's like choosing your character class at the beginning of a video game.
Exactly.
Now let's hop across the pond to our next contender.
Okay.
TOEFL.
TOEFL stands for Test of English as a Foreign Language. And it's a big deal, especially if you're dreaming of studying at a university in the U.S.
So this is the exam I'd need to conquer if I had my sights set on, say, Harvard or Stanford.
Exactly. Most American universities consider TOEFL scores a key part of their application process. And here's a major difference from the IELTS.
Okay.
The TOEFL is almost always done digitally.
Ah, okay.
So you'll be flexing those keyboard warrior skills
Right.
instead of perfecting your cursive handwriting.
So for those who prefer the clickety-clack of a keyboard over the scratch of a pen, TOEFL might be a good fit.
For sure.
Okay, we've covered the global all-rounder and the U.S. university specialist.
Mm-hmm.
What about those mysterious Cambridge exams?
Think of the Cambridge exams as earning badges of honor for your English level.
Uh-huh.
Instead of just getting a score, you choose a specific level to conquer, like B2 first or C1 advanced, and if you pass, you get a certificate.
It's like leveling up in a language learning game
Right.
and getting a permanent trophy to show off your achievement.
Exactly. And the best part is Cambridge certificates don't expire.
Wow.
They're your lifelong proof of English mastery.
Okay, so we've got the IELTS, our global go-getter, the TOEFL, the U.S. University Superstar, and the Cambridge exams are badge of honor achievers. They all test English skills, but I'm guessing there's more to it than that, right? Yeah, you're right.
What are some of the key differences that set them apart?
It's not just about what they test, but also how they test it. Let's start with the speaking section,
Oh.
the one that often sends shivers down test takers' spines.
Oh, yeah. The dreaded speaking test. I can still feel the butterflies in my stomach from my first time.
Well, picture this. It's IELTS speaking test day, and you're sitting face-to-face with an examiner. Think of it as like a mini interview where you get to showcase those conversational skills.
So if you're someone who thrives in those one-on-one interactions, the IELTS might be right up your alley.
It could be. However, if the thought of chatting with a stranger about your favorite hobby makes you want to melt into your chair,
Oh, yeah.
the TOEFL might be more your style.
Because it's all digital. Right. So you're speaking into a microphone, not staring into the eyes of an examiner.
Precisely.
Yeah,
And some people find that a lot less nerve-wracking.
definitely. And speaking of unique approaches, some Cambridge exam levels include a paired speaking test.
Yes.
Wait, a paired speaking test.
So you're actually chatting with a partner.
You got it. Imagine tackling those challenging questions alongside a friend.
That sounds way less intimidating than going it alone. Okay, so we've got the conversational IELTS, the digitally recorded TOEFL, and the buddy system Cambridge exams. What about how these exams are scored? Is it all apples to apples, or are we dealing with different kinds of fruit here?
It's definitely a fruit basket. The IELTS uses what they call band scores, which range from 1 to 9. Think of it like climbing a ladder. The higher the band, the more fluent you are.
So if someone's aiming for a top-tier university, they probably need to be pretty high up on that IELTS ladder.
You bet. The TOEFL, on the other hand, gives you a score out of 120, with each section worth 30 points. It's a bit more like a traditional test, adding up those points across the different skills.
All right, so IELTS is all about those bands. TOEFL is a point-gathering game. And what about the Cambridge exams? How does scoring work in that realm?
Cambridge exams are all about those levels we talked about earlier. They align with something called the CT scale, which stands for the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages.
Okay, that's a mouthful.
Yeah, it is. Break that down for me.
The CEFR scale is like a roadmap for language proficiency. It goes from A1, which is beginner level, all the way up to C2, which is basically English mastery.
So with the Cambridge exams, you're choosing your challenge level, and if you pass, you're basically saying, I've officially conquered English at this
I
level.
got it. Now, here's what's interesting about the CEFR scale.
Okay.
It's not just about passing or failing a specific exam. It's about understanding what you can actually do with the language at each level.
Oh, that makes sense. So it's not just about getting a piece of paper that says you passed an exam. It's about being able to use your English skills in real-world situations. So let's say I'm sitting here thinking, okay, great, 3 different English exams, all with their correctable. How do I choose the one that's right for me? Where do I even start? That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's where things get really interesting. Because choosing the right exam isn't just about the exam itself. It's about your goals, your preferences, and your strengths. It's about finding that perfect match.
Ooh, I like the sound of that.
Yeah.
Finding that perfect match.
Yeah. It's like finding the right pair of shoes. You wouldn't wear hiking boots to a ballroom dance, would you?
Definitely not my style.
Yeah.
So let's break down this exam choosing process.
Yeah.
What's the first thing to consider?
I think you really want to start with your goals.
Okay.
Like, why are you taking this exam in the first place?
Right.
What doors are you hoping to open?
Right. If you're dreaming of studying marine biology in Australia, IELTS might be your best bet.
Yeah.
But if you're aiming for a film degree, at NYU TOEFL would probably be the way to go.
That's a great way to think about it. It's about aligning your exam choice with your ultimate destination. Now, once you've got those big picture goals sorted out, let's zoom in on your preferences.
Preferences. What kind of preferences are we talking about here?
Think about what kind of learner you are. What makes you feel comfortable and confident when you're taking a test?
So it's about knowing your own learning style. I, for one, am a terrible test taker when it comes to timed essays. My hand cramps up, my brain freezes, and I end up with a jumbled mess of words on the page.
Oh yeah, I know that feeling. If you're someone who dreads handwritten essays, the digital format of the TOEFL might be a better fit for you. On the flip side, if you love crafting those perfectly structured essays and showcasing your beautiful handwriting, the IELTS might be more your jam.
It's like choosing your weapon of choice for a language duel.
Yeah, exactly.
So we got our goals, our preferences, and what else?
Strengths.
Oh, yeah.
Don't forget about those. What are you naturally good at when it comes to English? Are you a grammar guru? A vocabulary virtuoso? A listening master?
Or maybe you're a storytelling superstar who can captivate an audience with your tales.
Exactly. Knowing your strengths can help you choose an exam that plays to those strengths and helps you shine. For example, if grammar and vocabulary are your superpowers, the Cambridge exams, which emphasize accuracy and range, might be a great way to show off those skills.
So it's all about playing to your strengths and minimizing your weaknesses. It's like assembling a dream team of English skills to tackle the exam challenge. Now let's shift gears and talk about how to actually prepare for these exams. Where does one even begin?
That's where the real journey begins. And just like every journey, preparation is key. But the beauty of it is that you don't have to go it alone.
I like the sound of that. What kind of resources are out there to help us along the way?
There are tons of great resources available both online and offline. You've got practice tests, vocabulary builders, grammar guides, apps, online courses, and even in-person tutoring if you prefer that face-to-face interaction.
It's like having a whole support crew cheering you on as you train for the big game. But with all these options, it can feel overwhelming to know where to start. Any tips for navigating this prep jungle?
Absolutely. The first thing I'd recommend is to familiarize yourself with the format of the exam you've chosen. What are the different sections? What types of questions will you encounter? How much time will you have for each section?
So it's like scouting out the playing field before the game starts. You want to know what you're up against. Once you've got a handle on the format, where do you go from there?
Then it's all about practice, practice, practice. And I'm not just talking about drilling grammar rules and memorizing vocabulary lists. I'm talking about practicing in a way that feels real and engaging.
Ooh, I like the sound of that.
Mm.
Tell me more. What does engaging practice look like?
Think about the skills you'll need to use on the exam and find ways to practice those skills in real-life situations. If you're prepping for the IELTS speaking test, find opportunities to have conversations in English, whether it's with a friend, a tutor, or even just yourself in the mirror.
Talking to yourself in the mirror.
Yeah.
I might get some strange looks from my roommates.
Well, maybe close the bathroom door first. But the point is, the more you can immerse yourself in the language, the more natural and effortless it will become.
So it's about turning everyday life into an English language adventure. I love that. What about the other sections like listening and reading? How can we practice those in a more engaging way?
For listening, try listening to podcasts, watching movies or TV shows in English, or even listening to audiobooks. The key is to find something you enjoy, something that holds your attention so that you're actively engaged with the language.
So it's about making English a part of your everyday entertainment, not just something you study from a textbook.
Exactly. And for reading, find articles, books, or even blog posts on topics that interest you. The more you enjoy what you're reading, the more likely you are to absorb the language and expand your vocabulary.
So instead of forcing myself to read dry academic journals, I could curl up with a good novel in English or browse my favorite websites in English.
Exactly. It's all about making English a part of your life, not just the subject you study. And as you practice, pay attention to your weaknesses.
So it's not just about blindly practicing everything. It's about being strategic and focusing on those areas where you need a little extra boost.
Precisely. If you're struggling with grammar, for example, spend some extra time reviewing those tricky rules and doing practice exercises. If you're finding the listening section challenging, focus on improving your listening comprehension skills by practicing with different accents and listening speeds.
It's like a personalized training program for your English skills. Now let's talk about something that can be super helpful for getting familiar with the actual exam experience, practice tests. What's the deal with those and how can we make the most of them?
Practice tests are like your secret weapon for exam success. They give you a taste of the real deal, helping you get familiar with the format, the types of questions, and the time constraints.
So it's like a dress rehearsal before opening night.
Yeah.
But just taking a practice test isn't enough, right? How can we use them to really level up our skills?
The key is to treat practice tests as learning opportunities, not just assessments. Don't just focus on your score. Analyze your mistakes. Figure out why you got certain questions wrong.
So it's like having a coach review the game footage and point out areas for improvement.
Exactly. Once you've identified your weak spots, go back and review those concepts. Do some targeted practice in those areas, and then retake the practice test to see if you've improved.
It's like a cycle of continuous improvement. Now, I know some people get super stressed out about practice tests, treating them like the actual exam. Any advice for calming those pre-test jitters?
Yeah, practice tests are your allies, not your enemies. Think of them as training grounds where you can experiment, make mistakes, and learn without any consequences. The more you practice, the more comfortable and confident you'll feel when the real exam rolls around.
So it's about shifting our perspective from fear to opportunity. Practice tests become our playground for language growth, not a source of stress. That's a game changer. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room, the speaking test.
Ah, yes, the speaking test, the one that often makes palms sweat and hearts race.
I think we've all been there. What are some tips for conquering this beast and letting our English skills shine?
Well, first and foremost, remember that the speaking test is about communication, not perfection. The examiners aren't expecting you to deliver a flawless scripted monologue. They want to see that you can communicate your ideas clearly and effectively in English.
So it's about being natural, engaging, and showing off those conversational skills we've been practicing.
Exactly. Now, here are a few practical tips that can help you feel more confident and prepared. First, practice answering common speaking test questions.
Like, tell me about your hobbies, or describe your dream job.
Exactly, those kinds of questions. Get comfortable talking about yourself, your interests, and your experiences in English. Practice with a friend, a tutor, or even just record yourself and listen back to see how you can improve your fluency and clarity.
So it's about getting those English muscles warmed up and ready to go. What other tips do you have up your sleeve?
Another helpful tip is to focus on your pronunciation. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it should be clear enough that the examiner can understand what you're saying.
So no mumbling or speaking too quickly.
Exactly. Pay attention to your intonation, your stress patterns, and the sounds that you find particularly challenging. There are tons of resources available online that can help you improve your pronunciation, like pronunciation apps, videos, and websites.
It's like having a personal pronunciation coach in your pocket. What other speaking test wisdom can you share with us?
Okay, here's a tip that often gets overlooked. Don't be afraid to ask for clarification if you don't understand a question. It's better to ask for help than to try to muddle through and potentially give an answer that doesn't make sense.
That's such a good point.
Yeah.
It shows that you're actively listening and that you're willing to engage with the examiner. And it can also buy you a few extra seconds to gather your thoughts and come up with a brilliant response. Speaking of brilliant responses, any tips for structuring our answers in a way that's clear, concise, and impressive?
Absolutely. One simple but effective technique is to use the PRP method. PRP method. Tell me more. I love a good acronym.
PRPP stands for Point, Reason, Example, Point. It's a simple framework that can help you structure your answers in a logical and persuasive way. Okay, I'm intrigued. Break it down for me.
Let's say the examiner asks you, do you prefer reading books or watching movies? You could start with your point, I prefer reading books. Then you give a reason. I find that reading allows me to use my imagination and create my own visual world. Next, you provide an example. For instance, when I was reading The Lord of the Rings, I could picture the characters and the landscapes in vivid detail. And finally, you restate your point. That's why I find reading to be a more immersive and enjoyable experience.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
It's a simple structure, but it's so effective. It helps you stay on track, provide a clear and concise answer, and even add a little flair with a personal example.
Exactly. It's a great way to make your answers stand out and show off your English skills. Now let's move on to another section that often causes test takers anxiety, the writing test.
Oh yes, the writing test.
Sure.
The one that can feel like a marathon of words and grammar rules. Any tips for making this section less daunting and more manageable?
Absolutely. First and foremost, remember that the writing test is about clear and effective communication, just like the speaking test. The examiners are looking for well-structured, coherent essays that address the given prompt directly and demonstrate a good command of English grammar and vocabulary.
So it's not just about showing off fancy words and complicated sentence structures.
Not at all. It's about using your language skills to communicate your ideas in a clear, concise, and engaging way. Now, here are a few practical tips to help you ace the rating section. First, understand the different types of essays you might be asked to write.
Like, what are we talking about here? Argumentative essays? Persuasive essays? Compare and contrast essays?
Exactly. Familiarize yourself with the different essay structures and the types of arguments and evidence you'll need to support your points. Practice brainstorming ideas and outlining your essays before you start writing. This will help you stay organized and focused, and it will prevent you from going off on tangents or running out of time.
So it's all about planning and strategizing before you dive into the writing itself. I like that. Any other tips for making our essays shine?
Yeah, pay attention to your grammar and vocabulary. Use a variety of sentence structures and vocabulary words to showcase your language skills. But don't sacrifice clarity for complexity.
Right. It's better to write a clear and concise sentence than to try to force in a fancy word that you're not quite sure how to use correctly.
Exactly. And don't forget about proofreading. Give yourself enough time to read through your essay carefully and catch any errors in grammar, spelling, or punctuation.
It's like giving your essay a final polish before you send it out into the world. Now let's shift gears to the listening test, the one that can feel like a whirlwind of accents and fast-paced speech. What are some strategies for making sense of this auditory chaos?
The listening test can definitely feel like a challenge, especially if you're not used to hearing different accents or listening to long passages of audio. But there are things you can do to improve your listening comprehension skills and boost your confidence.
Tell me everything, I'm all ears.
First and foremost, practice listening to a variety of English accents.
So we're talking British, American, Australian, Canadian, the whole shebang.
Exactly. The more you expose yourself to different accents, the more comfortable you'll become with understanding them. You can find listening materials online, watch movies or TV shows with different accents, or even listen to podcasts from different English-speaking countries.
It's like giving your ears a workout with an international playlist. What else can we do to sharpen those listening skills?
Practice listening for specific information. Pay attention to keywords, dates, names, and other important details. Don't try to understand every single word. Focus on the main ideas and the key information you need to answer the questions.
So it's about being a detective, sifting through the audio clues to find the answers.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to use your notes. Jot down keywords, phrases, or even little diagrams that help you remember what you've heard. Your notes are your allies in the listening test.
They're like our secret decoder rings for cracking the listening code. Now let's move on to the final section, the reading test. I know some people find this section to be the most time-consuming and challenging. What advice do you have for tackling those lengthy passages and tricky questions?
The reading test can definitely be a beast, but with the right strategies, you can tame it. First, familiarize yourself with the different types of reading passages you might encounter.
So are we talking about newspaper articles, academic journals, fiction excerpts, the whole literary buffet?
Exactly. Practice reading a variety of texts so that you're comfortable with different writing styles and levels of complexity. Now, here's a key tip for tackling those lengthy passages. Don't try to read every word.
Wait, what? We're not supposed to read the whole thing.
Not necessarily. Skim the passage first to get a general understanding of the topic and the main ideas. Then go back and read more carefully the sections that are relevant to the questions.
So it's about being strategic with our reading and focusing on the information that's actually going to help us answer the questions.
Exactly. Don't waste time getting bogged down in details that aren't important.
It's like panning for gold. We're looking for those nuggets of information, not getting distracted by the rocks and dirt.
Yeah.
Any other tips for acing the reading test?
Pay attention to keywords and phrases in the questions. These will often guide you to the relevant sections of the passage. And don't be afraid to underline or highlight important information as you read. It will help you remember what you've read and make it easier to find the information you need when you're answering the questions.
It's like creating a roadmap for our reading journey. Now let's talk about something that can really make a difference in our exam performance, and that's our mindset. How can we cultivate a mindset that will help us feel confident, focused, and ready to rock those exams?
Mindset is everything when it comes to exams. It's about believing in yourself, trusting your preparation, and approaching the exam with a positive and proactive attitude.
So instead of thinking I'm going to fail this exam, we should be thinking I'm going to crush this exam.
Exactly. Believe in your ability to succeed. You've put in the work, you've practiced, you've learned, and you're ready to show the world what you can do.
It's like giving ourselves a pep talk before we step onto the playing field. What are some practical tips for cultivating that confident mindset?
Visualization can be a powerful tool. Imagine yourself walking into the exam room feeling calm, confident, and prepared.
Hmm.
Visualize yourself answering the questions with ease and accuracy. See yourself walking out of the exam feeling proud of your performance.
So it's like creating a mental movie of exam success. I love
Yeah.
that. What other mindset tips can you share with us?
Practice positive self-talk. Instead of focusing on your fears and doubts, replace those negative thoughts with positive affirmations.
Like, I am capable. I am prepared. I am going to rack this exam.
Exactly. Those kinds of affirmations can help you shift your mindset from fear to confidence. And finally, remember to take care of yourself.
Ah, yes, the importance of self-care. What does that look like in the context of exam preparation?
Get enough sleep the night before the exam. Eat healthy foods that will fuel your brain and body. Avoid cramming or staying up all night studying.
So no all-nighters fueled by pizza and energy drinks.
Exactly. Those might seem like a good idea at the time, but they'll ultimately do more harm than good. You want to be well-rested, clear-headed, and energized when you walk into that exam room.
Right. It's like prepping for a marathon. You wouldn't run a marathon on an empty stomach and no sleep, would you?
Exactly. Treat your exam like an athletic event. Prepare your mind and body for peak performance.
So we've covered a lot of ground here, from choosing the right exam to prepping for success and even cultivating that all-important confident mindset. But before we wrap up this section, I want to address something that I know a lot of test takers struggle with. Test anxiety. What advice do you have for managing those pre-test nerves and preventing them from sabotaging our performance?
Test anxiety is completely normal. It's our body's natural response to a perceived threat or challenge. But the good news is that there are things we can do to manage those nerves and prevent them from taking over.
Tell me everything. I think we could all use a little anxiety-busting magic in our lives.
One of the most effective ways to manage test anxiety is to practice relaxation techniques. Deep breathing meditation yoga, or even just listening to calming music can help slow down your heart rate, calm your mind, and reduce those feelings of overwhelm.
So it's about finding those little pockets of peace and stillness amidst the chaos of exam preparation.
Exactly. Another helpful tip is to challenge those negative thoughts that are feeding your anxiety.
Like those thoughts that say, I'm not good enough or I'm going to fail.
Exactly. Those kinds of thoughts are not helpful, and they're often not even true. Challenge them by asking yourself, is there any evidence to support this thought? Or, what would I say to a friend who is having this thought?
So it's about being our own best friend and offering ourselves the same kindness and support we would offer to someone we care about. I love that. What other anxiety-busting tips can you share with us?
Focus on what you can control. You can't control the exam itself, but you can control your preparation, your mindset, and your self-care. Focus on those things and let go of the things you can't control.
It's like that serenity prayer. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Exactly. And finally, remember that this is just one exam. It doesn't define you as a person. No matter what happens, you'll learn and grow from the experience.
That's such a powerful reminder. It's so easy to get caught up in the pressure and the stakes. But at the end of the day, it's just one exam. It doesn't determine our worth or our potential.
Exactly. So breathe, relax, trust yourself, and go out there and do your best.
And that, my friends, brings us to the end of our deep dive into the world of English proficiency exams. We've covered a lot of ground, but hopefully you're feeling more informed, more prepared, and more confident about tackling these exams head on.
Remember, you've got.
Now, before we wrap up this episode, I want to remind our listeners that we have a ton of awesome resources available in the show notes to help you on your English exam journey.
We've got links to practice tests, vocabulary builders, grammar guides, apps, online courses, and even information about finding a tutor if you're looking for that extra personalized support.
We've got you covered, so be sure to check out the show notes for all the goodies. Now it's time for our final thoughts and parting words of wisdom. What's the one message you want our listeners to take away from this deep dive?
I would say embrace the journey. Learning a language is an amazing adventure. It's about opening up new possibilities, connecting with new cultures, and expanding your horizons.
It's about becoming a citizen of the world. I love that.
So don't let the exams intimidate you. See them as stepping stones on your path to fluency and global citizenship.
That's such an inspiring way to think about it. And remember, no matter which exam you choose, the most important thing is to have fun along the way. Because when you're enjoying the process, the learning comes naturally.
Exactly. So go out there, explore the world of English, and let your language skills soar.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of English proficiency exams. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep diving deep. Okay, so we've decoded those acronyms, we've explored those differences, talked about prepping strategies, and even touched on managing that test anxiety. But before we wrap up our deep dive into the world of English exams, let's shift gears and talk about something really crucial.
The so what factor. What does it all actually mean?
Exactly.
Yeah.
We've thrown a lot of information your way, but how does this all translate into action? How do you actually use this knowledge to make the best decision for your unique situation?
It's like having all the ingredients for a delicious meal.
Okay.
But now you need that recipe to kind of put it all together.
I love that analogy. So what's the recipe for choosing the right English exam?
Okay, so first you want to revisit those goals we talked about.
All right.
You want to really hone in on what you're hoping to achieve with this exam. Is it about getting into a specific university, securing a job in an English-speaking country, or simply proving your English proficiency for personal satisfaction?
Right, because the why behind your exam choice will kind of guide you toward the what.
Precisely. Once you have a crystal clear vision of your goals, look back at the key differences we discussed between IELTS, TOEFL, and Cambridge exams. Which exam aligns best with your goals, both in terms of what it tests and where it's accepted?
So if your dream is to study literature at Oxford, the IELTS, with its focus on academic English and its wide acceptance in the UK, would likely be the best fit.
Yeah.
But if you're aiming for a computer science degree at the TOEFL, with its emphasis on technical vocabulary and its popularity in U.S. universities, would probably be a better choice.
Exactly. Now let's sprinkle in those personal preferences. Which exam format makes you feel most comfortable and confident? Do you thrive in a face-to-face interview setting like the IELTS speaking test? Or do you prefer the digital format of the TOEFL where you can record your answers at your own pace?
And don't forget about those test-taking quirks we all have. If the thought of a timed essay sends you into a spiral of anxiety, the TOEFL, with its typed responses, might be a better match for you.
Absolutely. It's about acknowledging those individual nuances and choosing an exam that plays to your strengths and minimizes your weaknesses.
Right.
And finally, don't underestimate the power of those strengths we talked about.
Right. If grammar is your jam and vocabulary is your playground, the Cambridge exams, with their focus on accuracy and range, might be your chance to shine.
It's like using a superhero costume that highlights your unique superpowers.
I love that. So we've got our goals guiding our direction, our preferences shaping our comfort level, and our strengths adding that extra boost of confidence. What happens when we put all these ingredients together?
You get a recipe for success. You've identified the English exam that's your perfect match, the one that aligns with who you are, what you want to achieve, and how you learn best.
It's like finding that missing puzzle piece that completes the picture. Now let's talk about one final ingredient that's essential for any successful recipe: action. What are some concrete steps listeners can take to turn this knowledge into tangible progress?
Okay, so the first step is research.
Okay.
Dive deeper into the specific requirements of the exam you've chosen. Check out the official websites, explore sample questions, and familiarize yourself with the scoring system.
So it's about going from a general understanding to a more detailed game plan.
Exactly. Next, you want to set realistic goals for yourself.
Okay.
Break down your preparation into manageable chunks, whether it's focusing on a specific grammar rule each week or practicing a certain number of listening exercises each day.
It's like training for a marathon.
Hmm.
You wouldn't try to run 26 miles on your first day of training, would you?
Not unless you're aiming for a trip to the emergency room. Start small, build momentum, and celebrate your progress along the way.
Those little victories can be so motivating. Now, what about finding the right resources to support our preparation? I know we mentioned a ton of options earlier, but how do we know which ones are the best fit for us?
It's all about experimentation and personalization. Try out different resources and see what works best for you. Maybe you thrive with online courses that provide structured lessons and interactive exercises. Or perhaps you prefer working with a tutor who can offer personalized feedback and support.
It's like trying on different outfits until you find the one that fits you perfectly and makes you feel confident and ready to take on the world.
Exactly. And remember, it's okay to ask for help. Don't be afraid to reach out to teachers, friends, or family members who can offer support guidance or even just a listening ear.
Sometimes just talking through our challenges can make them feel less overwhelming and more manageable.
Absolutely. And finally, don't forget to celebrate your successes along the way. Acknowledge your hard work, reward yourself for your progress, and remind yourself that you're capable of achieving amazing things.
It's like giving ourselves a high five for every milestone we reach. Now, as we wrap up this deep dive, let's leave our listeners with a final thought, a nugget of wisdom to carry with them on their English exam journey.
I would say embrace the challenge. Don't let that fear of failure hold you back. See these exams as opportunities for growth, for pushing yourself beyond your comfort zone, and for discovering the incredible power of language.
It's about transforming fear into fueled doubt, into determination, and challenges into triumphs.
Exactly. So go out there, embrace the journey, and let your English skills soar.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of English proficiency exams. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep diving deep.
We hope the insights shared today help you better understand the IELTS, TOEFL, and Cambridge English exams and how to prepare effectively. If you're gearing up for these exams, don't miss out on our English test preparation courses, specially designed to improve your listening, speaking, reading, and writing skills. Visit our website to learn more and enroll English test preparation courses. Our expert instructors are ready to guide you every step of the way to achieve your dream score. Don't forget to follow our podcast and share it with your friends preparing for English tests. Let's help more learners gain the knowledge and confidence they need. Best of luck with your preparation, and we'll see you in the next episode.